Wesley Pierce was 15 minutes late, mildly hungover, and deeply regretting the espresso shot that was now waging war inside his stomach as he yanked open the door to conference room B. He stopped in the doorway. The room was nothing like the crypto investment pitch he thought he was walking into. Instead of a sea of navy suits and Bluetooth earpieces, the audience here was mostly women seated in neat rows, notebooks open, eyes fixed on the front. And at the front of the room stood a woman tall, confident, her dark curls pinned up carelessly, a white button-down tucked into high-waisted jeans, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She wasn't reading off a PowerPoint or hiding behind a podium. She was just talking, like she lived every word. We tell ourselves we're not ready, that we need to read just one more book or wait until we're more qualified, she said, pacing slowly. But the truth is, no one's going to give us permission to chase our own lives. We have to give it to ourselves. Wesley blinked. He was still standing in the doorway when someone behind him whispered, "Hey, you going in, or what?" Snapped out of his daze, Wesley slid into the last row. He figured he'd stay for 5 minutes, maybe 10. Just long enough to not look like a complete idiot. But 5 minutes turned into the full hour. And he didn't check his phone once. By the time she said, "That's it for today. Go build something that scares you," the room erupted in applause. Wesley found himself clapping too, his palms tingling. She was magnetic. Not in the fake, polished way he was used to seeing at charity galas and corporate retreats. Something about her voice, her conviction, it was raw, real. He stood up as the crowd began to shuffle out, caught between leaving and walking straight up to her. Like a lunatic, he'd sat through 100 keynotes. None of them ever made him feel like this. She gathered her things into a worn leather satchel, not noticing him. "Excuse me," he said, walking up. "What was this?" She turned, eyebrows raised. Up close, she was even more striking. Her eyes sparked with curiosity, not judgment. "The seminar?" she asked. "It's called Fearless Founders. It's a series I run for women launching startups." "Right?" he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Yeah, I was actually looking for a blockchain panel. I think I walked into the wrong room." Her laugh was quick and unfiltered. "Well, that explains the suit." Wesley looked down at his custom charcoal Armani. "Too much. Only if you're planning to sell me a hedge fund." He grinned. "Not today." She stuck out her hand. "Emery Clarke." "Wesley," he said, shaking it. "Wesley Pierce." Her hand was warm, firm. No hesitation. "Nice to meet you." Wesley, who was looking for blockchain. "Nice to meet you." Emery, who speaks like a TED Talk but scarier. That made her laugh again, and he caught himself staring. Not at her mouth, but the way she threw her head back like she wasn't trying to be charming. She just was. "So, what do you do?" she asked, slinging the satchel over her shoulder. He hesitated. "I'm in tech. Investments. Startups, mostly." She raised an eyebrow. "Vague much. I like to keep things mysterious." "I'll bet." They stood there for a beat. He didn't want to walk away. And he had a feeling she wouldn't call him out for lingering. I would love to hear more about what you do," he said. "Maybe over coffee?" She tilted her head. "You mean like a business pitch?" "No," he said quickly. "I mean, unless you want it to be." Her eyes searched his. "All right, one coffee. But I picked the place. Deal." They ended up at a tiny cafe around the corner, the kind of place that had mismatched mugs and plants hanging from the ceiling. Emery ordered a lavender oat milk latte and didn't even blink when Wesley just asked for whatever she's having. They talked for over an hour. She told him about growing up in a tiny town in Oregon, about turning down a job offer from a Fortune 500 company because she wanted to build something that actually meant something. "You ever go back?" he asked. "Not really," she said. "I don't belong there anymore. But I don't quite belong here either. I'm somewhere in between." He nodded. "I get that." She looked at him, curious. "You?" Wesley looked out the window. "I've been in rooms with the richest people in the world. And somehow they're the loneliest rooms I've ever been in." She didn't laugh like most people would. She just sat back and listened. When they parted ways, she didn't give him her number. She just said, "Same time next week. Don't bring the suit," and walked away. Wesley stood there, heart racing, watching her disappear into the crowd. He had no idea what just happened. All he knew was he wasn't going to miss that next meeting. Not for anything. The following week, he showed up early. In jeans. Emery looked him up and down and gave a small nod of approval. Acceptable. Their coffee runs became routine. No business pitches. No job offers. Just long conversations about everything and nothing. She challenged him in ways no one else ever had. Called him out when he was vague. Forced him to think beyond stock options and acquisition deals. And somewhere between those conversations, Wesley started noticing things. The way her voice softened when she talked about her first failed startup. The way she never interrupted, but always made you feel like your words mattered. The way she gave her full attention to whoever was speaking like there was no one else in the world. He started canceling meetings. Skipping board calls. Just to sit in a folding chair in the back of her seminar. She never asked why he kept showing up. And he never told her the truth. That Wesley Pierce wasn't just a guy in tech. He was the founder of Pierce Global Ventures. A billionaire. And he was falling fast. Hard. For the woman who had no idea who he really was. Wesley stood under the pulsing gold light of the rooftop bar, watching Emery trace her finger down the side of her glass. The skyline stretched behind her like a painted backdrop, steel towers and blinking red lights. The hum of the city below. She didn't seem impressed. Not by the exclusive location, the panoramic view, or the fact that the bartender had greeted Wesley by name the moment they stepped in. She was studying the condensation on her drink like it held more value than the entire penthouse lounge. "You hate it," he said, taking a sip of his whiskey. "Be honest." "It's not that," Emery said, glancing at him. "It's just, this place feels like it wants something from me." He tilted his head. "What could it possibly want?" "Validation," she replied. "Everyone here's dressed like they're auditioning for the cover of Fortune. It's not a bar. It's a stage." Wesley laughed, more out of surprise than amusement. "You really don't hold anything back, do you?" "Why would I?" she said, eyes steady. "You invited me here. I assume you wanted the real version of me." "I did," he said. "I do. Then you get the full experience." No filters. He leaned back, watching her. The truth was, he had brought her here on purpose. Not for the drinks or the view, but to see how she'd react to his world, a world she didn't know was his. So far, she was unimpressed, and he found that refreshing, maybe even infuriating. "You ever think about scaling your course?" he asked, shifting the conversation. Emery nodded. "All the time. It's just a matter of resources." "What kind?" "Funding, team, infrastructure. I'm doing everything solo right now. If I took on too much, the quality would collapse." "You ever consider outside investment?" She lifted her eyes to his. "You offering?" He hesitated. "Hypothetically." Then hypothetically, no. I don't want someone else's agenda steering this. I built it because I believe in it. I won't trade that for a check. "It doesn't have to be a trade," he said. "It could be a partnership. Partnerships come with terms, and terms come with control." I've seen too many women hand over their vision to someone who promised to help and then watched it get twisted into something unrecognizable. Wesley set his glass down, the ice clinking. "You think I'd do that?" "I don't know what you'd do," she said, her voice even, "because I still don't really know who you are." He paused. The opening was right there. He could tell her the truth. That his name was on half the buildings in Midtown. That his last deal had reshaped the landscape of digital infrastructure. That the bartender hadn't greeted him because he was a regular, he'd greeted him because Wesley owned the building. But he didn't say any of that. Instead, he said, "Is that your polite way of saying I'm a mystery?" She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's my polite way of saying I've never met someone so careful with their answers." "I'm not being careful," he said. "I'm just trying to figure out how to keep up with you." She looked at him then, really looked. And for a moment, the noise around them faded. The The city, the clinking glasses, the low thrum of music, it all just dropped away. You don't have to keep up, she said quietly. You just have to be real. The words stuck to his ribs. He changed the subject. They left the bar an hour later. Emery turned down his offer to call her a car, instead disappearing into the crowd with a wave and a promise to call when she had time. She didn't. Not for 3 days. When she finally did, it was to invite him to a volunteer event her program was hosting. A day-long workshop for teenage girls interested in entrepreneurship. He expected a modest turnout. Maybe a few folding tables, some speakers. Instead, he walked into a packed community center buzzing with energy. Emery was at the center of it all, guiding a group through business plan exercises. Her sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, surrounded by whiteboards and markers. She didn't notice him at first. He stood near the back, watching as she moved from table to table, offering encouragement, challenging ideas, pushing the girls to think bigger. When she finally spotted him, her face didn't light up or soften. She just pointed to an empty table and said, "Sit. You're mentoring the next group." He blinked. "What?" "I told you I don't do tourists. If you're here, you're helping." So he sat. And for the next 4 hours, Wesley coached a rotating group of high schoolers through pitch ideas, pricing models, and branding exercises. One girl wanted to create eco-friendly cosmetics. Another had designed an app to help students track scholarships. They were bright, passionate, unapologetically ambitious, and Emery was at the heart of it all. When the event ended, he found her in the supply closet, boxing up materials. "You could have warned me," he said, lifting a stack of binders from the floor. "Where's the fun in that?" He leaned against the doorframe. "That was incredible." "They were incredible," she said. "I just gave them the space." "You gave them more than that," he said. "You gave them belief." She glanced at him, caught off guard. "You don't say things like that," she said. "Maybe I don't usually have a reason to." They stood in silence for a beat. Outside, the last of the volunteers filtered out, leaving the center quiet. "I meant what I said," she said. "I don't know who you are." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I'm not hiding anything," he said finally. "I didn't say you were, but you're not exactly transparent either." "I will be," he said. "Just, not yet." Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. "Fair enough," she said. "But if you're not real with me soon, I'm going to assume it's because you don't want to be." She picked up the last box and walked past him, out the door. He stood there for a long time, heart thudding against his ribs. She wasn't going to wait forever, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could lie, because what started out as a misstep, a wrong room, a fluke, was rapidly becoming the most honest connection he'd ever had. And the longer he waited, the harder the truth was going to land. He reached for his phone. There were 3 missed calls from his assistant, 2 from his lawyer, and 1 from his father. He ignored all of them. Instead, he opened his contacts and hovered over Emery's name. Then he typed one word, "Dinner?" No reply came, but the next morning, she was waiting outside his building, leaning against the stone lion by the entrance, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head. "How do you feel about cooking your own dinner?" she asked as he approached. He blinked. "You want me to cook? You're always in control. I want to see what you're like when you're out of your depth." He laughed. "You're assuming I can't cook. And I'm assuming you've never chopped an onion in your life." She wasn't wrong, but he followed her anyway. Through the streets, into a neighborhood he'd never walked through, up a narrow staircase that creaked under their feet. Her apartment was small, cozy. Every surface told a story, handwritten notes pinned to the fridge, half-read books stacked on the coffee table, mismatched plates drying in a rack by the sink. It smelled like basil and old wood. She handed him an apron and a knife, pointed to a cutting board, and said, "Peppers. Thin slices. Try not to maim yourself." He rolled up his sleeves. "No promises." "They cooked?" "Sort of." He fumbled the onions. She burned the first batch of pasta. They laughed until their sides hurt. And somewhere between the chopping and the stirring, he forgot about the emails, the acquisitions, the billion-dollar decisions waiting in his inbox. He was just Wesley. And she was Emery. And nothing else mattered. But as he carried the last plate to the sink, he caught sight of a newspaper folded on the counter. His name stared back at him from the business page. Pierce Global acquires Bloom Technologies in record deal. He froze. Emery hadn't noticed. Yet, he turned the paper upside down, heart racing. It was only a matter of time. And when the truth came out, he had no idea if she'd ever look at him the same way again. Wesley stared at the upside-down newspaper on Emery's counter like it had turned into a live wire. His real name, was sprawled across the business section in bold lettering, the kind of headline designed to impress boardrooms and scare off competitors. He felt it like a punch in the chest. Emery was rinsing dishes at the sink, her back to him. The sound of running water and clinking plates filled the small kitchen, but all he could hear was the roar of the truth clawing its way to the surface. She didn't know. Not yet. But that window was closing. He ran a hand over his jaw and forced himself to look away from the paper. The headline wouldn't vanish just because he wanted it to. And even if it did, the truth was still there, curled up behind his ribs, ready to explode the second it escaped. That night, he didn't tell her. He walked home through quiet streets, Emery's laughter still echoing somewhere in the back of his mind, and tried to convince himself that waiting just one more day wouldn't make things worse. The next morning, he was proven wrong. He hadn't even made it through his second meeting when Mia, his assistant, buzzed his office. "You have a visitor," she said, her voice unusually tight. "I'm not expecting anyone," Wesley replied. She didn't seem to care. Before he could ask, the door swung open. Emery stepped into his office. Not the Emery he saw at coffee shops or community centers. This version was steel. Her curls were pulled into a sleek twist, her white blouse crisp and tucked into tailored black slacks. There was no trace of the easy warmth she usually carried. She held up the newspaper. "Funny how I had to find out from the Times." Wesley stood slowly. "Emery Pierce Global Ventures," she cut in. "You don't just work in tech investments. You are tech investments." He took a step forward, but she didn't move. "I wanted to tell you," he said. "When?" Her voice was sharp. "After another rooftop bar? After you helped me wash Tupperware?" "I didn't lie," he said. "I just didn't correct your assumptions." "That's not better." He exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. "I didn't plan any of this. I walked into the wrong room. I stayed because of you. And the more time I spent with you, the harder it got to figure out how to explain who I was without it ruining everything." She stared at him, eyes glassy but furious. "You had 10 chances to come clean. I didn't care what you did for a living, Wesley. I cared that you showed up, that you listened. That for once, someone wasn't trying to fix me or fund me or make me a project. I wasn't doing any of that," he said. "No?" She held up the paper again. "Then what's this? A coincidence? It's a deal I've been working on for months. Long before I met you. And yet you let me think you were just some guy crashing seminars and buying lavender lattes." "I never said I wasn't more," he said quietly. "I just didn't know how to be more without losing you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Emery folded the newspaper with slow precision and set it on his desk. "I'm not angry because you're rich," she said finally. "I'm angry because you didn't trust me enough to tell me." Then she turned and walked out, her heels echoing on the marble floor like gunshots. Wesley didn't chase her. He couldn't. Not yet. His phone rang 10 minutes later. "Me again. Do you want to cancel the afternoon?" He stared at the empty doorway. "No," he said hoarsely. "Move everything. I'm going out." He didn't know where he was going until he got there. The community center was quieter than usual, the afternoon lull settling in. He walked the halls until he found the room where Emery usually ran her workshops. It was empty now, just a few chairs left in a circle, a whiteboard with half-erased notes about branding and customer archetypes. He sat in the back row. The same folding chair he'd taken the first day. The room felt different now. Not because of the space, but because of what it meant. This wasn't just where he met her. This was where he started becoming someone else, someone real. A door creaked somewhere behind him. He didn't turn. "You're either the most persistent man I've ever met," said a voice from the doorway, "or the most stubborn." He stood. Emery leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Her expression was unreadable. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. "I didn't know where else to go." She stepped into the room but didn't come any closer. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked again, softer this time. "Because I didn't want to be Pierce Global Ventures around you," he said. "I wanted to be Wesley, just Wesley, and for the first time that felt like enough." She looked at the chairs, the whiteboard, the parts of her world he'd stepped into without ever really explaining who he was. "I don't need your money," she said. "I know. And I don't want your charity. Not offering it." She finally met his gaze. "Then what are you offering?" He walked to the center of the room. "Myself," he said. "Not the version that closes billion-dollar deals or gets invited to economic forums. Just me. The guy who walked into the wrong room and couldn't look away from the woman standing at the front." Emery didn't speak. The silence stretched. Wesley let it. Then finally she took a step forward. "One thing," she said. "If this is going to be anything, if we're going to try, you don't get to decide what I can handle. You don't get to hide things from me for my own good. I want the truth. Always." He nodded. "Deal." Her eyes searched his face. "And no more surprises?" He hesitated. "There's one," he said. "But it's not bad." She raised an eyebrow. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket. "It's a grant. For 10 women from your program. Fully funded mentorships. No strings. They'll be paired with investors, guided through pitch development, and given seed capital. Quietly. No press. No Pierce Global branding." Emery opened the envelope and scanned the details. "This is real?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "But if you don't want it, I'll shred it." She folded the paper slowly, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it under her arm. "Let me think about it," she said. "Take all the time you need." She looked at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, she walked past him and out of the room. But this time, she didn't close the door behind her. That night, Wesley didn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse with the city spread out below, the silence louder than any boardroom he'd ever stepped into. He thought about everything he hadn't said, everything he wanted to say, and everything he still didn't know how to fix. The next morning, a message arrived. One line, one address. He didn't hesitate. He arrived at a brownstone in Brooklyn, the sun just beginning to rise, casting warm light over the steps. Emery sat on the stoop, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. She didn't look surprised to see him. She just handed him the second cup. He took it. They sat in silence for a moment, the air between them charged but not broken. "I read the whole grant," she said finally. "It's solid." "I meant it," he said. "Every part." "I know." She sipped her coffee and looked out at the street. "I don't want to be a story you tell at cocktail parties," she said. "I don't want to be your exception." "You're not," he said. "You're the reason I'm rewriting every rule." She looked at him, something shifting in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I." They sat there, side by side, the city starting to wake around them. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a rooftop or a gala. It was just morning light and bitter coffee and two people trying to rebuild something real. And for now, that was enough. By the time the gala arrived, Wesley hadn't seen Emery in 4 days. Not because she was avoiding him, she'd made that clear. She simply had a full schedule: pitch reviews, curriculum development, a panel event in Queens, and she wasn't going to reshuffle her life to orbit his. Which oddly made him want her even more. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the Langston, a private events venue perched above the Hudson, watching the city's lights shimmer over the water. The gala was in full swing behind him, champagne flutes clinking, strings swelling from a live quartet, and the buzz of Manhattan's elite gathered under chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. Wesley had hosted countless events like this, but tonight, the air felt heavier, more deliberate. Because tonight wasn't about expanding portfolios or charming foreign investors. Tonight was the official launch of the Fearless Founders Fellowship, the grant he'd built in secret, now brought into the light. Emery had agreed to attend, but only under one condition. No speeches, she had said. I'm not here to be paraded. And he'd agreed. But that didn't stop him from watching the elevator doors every time they opened. When she finally arrived, he didn't see her at first. He felt it, the shift in energy, the quiet ripple through the crowd. She moved through the room like she belonged, effortlessly elegant in a midnight blue silk jumpsuit, her curls loose for the first time since he'd known her. She saw him before he could move toward her. You look like you haven't breathed since I walked in, Emery said, stopping just close enough that her perfume, something warm and subtle, grazed his senses. That's because I haven't. I told you I'd come. I know. I just didn't expect you to wear something that would stop my heart. I only dress up for causes I believe in, she said, tilting her head. And the fellowship, this was the right kind of bold. He reached into his jacket and handed her a folded card. She raised an eyebrow as she opened it. Her name was printed in gold across the top. Recipient of the Langston Impact Award for Vision in Education. You said no speeches, he said. This is the closest I could get. Her fingers tightened slightly on the card. You didn't have to do this. I know. But I wanted to. She looked up at him. You're not trying to impress me anymore. No, he said. I'm trying to match you. She exhaled slowly, then tucked the card into her clutch. I'm going to need a drink. He offered his arm. Bar's this way. They moved through the room together, and for once, Wesley didn't feel like he was performing. People nodded, some approached, but most kept their distance. He was known for being unpredictable when it came to personal guests. No one wanted to be the one to cross the line. When they reached the bar, she ordered a whiskey neat. Wesley mirrored her, ignoring the surprised glance from the bartender. I have a question, she said once they found a quieter corner. Ask. Would you still be doing this if I hadn't called you out? Yes, he said without hesitation. But maybe not this way. You pushed me to stop hiding. That changed everything. I didn't push. I just didn't let you coast. Same thing. She laughed softly, and for the first time that night, her shoulders relaxed. A server passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Emery took one, studied it, then set it back down. That's why I don't do these things, she said. Tiny food pretending to be important. There's a steakhouse 2 blocks from here, he said. We could disappear. Tempting. But I want to see the girls. They're here. Back row. Blown away. Wesley turned, scanning the room until he found them a cluster of wide-eyed young women, half in borrowed dresses, half in business casual, clinging to each other as if they couldn't believe they'd been allowed into the room. That's your legacy, Emery said. Not the buildings or the mergers. Them. I know. A pause. Then I saw the article yesterday, she said. The one that called you the phantom architect of New York's digital empire. He grimaced. Catchy. Also absurd. You're not a phantom. Just a man who got very good at hiding in plain sight. I'm working on that. She nodded. I can tell. They stood together in silence, the music swelling again as the quartet shifted to something slower. Couples began drifting to the dance floor. Wesley turned toward her. Dance with me. I don't really know speeches. No obligations. Just us. She hesitated. Then she slid her hand into his. Under the soft golden lights, with the city glittering beyond the glass, he held her close. Not tightly, just enough to feel the rhythm of her breath against his chest. You know, she murmured, if someone had told me a billionaire would crash my seminar and then fund my entire dream structure, I'd have laughed in their face. If someone told me the woman I accidentally stumbled into would be the one to teach me how to live outside a boardroom, I'd have fired them. She smiled, her cheek brushing his collarbone. I'm still mad at you, she said. I know. But I'm also still here. I know that too. I don't want to be a footnote in someone's transformation story. You're not, he said. You're the author. The music faded, But they didn't move. It wasn't about the gala anymore. It never had been. Later that night, after the crowd thinned and the final toast was made, Wesley led Emery to the rooftop of the building. No one else was up there. Just the two of them, and the city stretched out like a dream. She turned to him. "So what now?" "Now," he said, "we build something real. Together. And what does that look like?" "Whatever we want it to." He pulled something from his pocket. Not a ring. Not yet. But a small silver key. "To the brownstone," he said. "Top floor. I bought it this morning." Her eyes widened. "You're insane." "Probably. You don't even know if I want to live with you." "I don't," he said. "But the space is yours. To work. To host. To build anything you want. No strings. And if one day you want me there too, I'd be the luckiest man alive." She looked at the key. Then at him. "I don't need a penthouse," she said. "I know. But I do need someone who shows up. Every time. I will." She took the key. And then she kissed him. Not gently. Not tentatively. But like a woman who had built everything on her own and was finally choosing to let someone in. And he kissed her back. Because Emery Clarke hadn't just stolen his heart. She'd rewritten the terms of his life. And for once, Wesley Pierce was exactly where he wanted to be, not at the top of a skyline, but beside the only woman who ever made him want to stay grounded. Forever. The key was still warm in her palm when Emery stepped into the brownstone's top floor later that week. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't need to. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall, arched windows, casting golden rectangles across the hardwood floors. It smelled faintly of fresh paint and sandalwood. She stood in the center of the empty space, the silence wrapping around her like a question. This wasn't just a gift. It was a decision point. Behind her, the door clicked open. She didn't have to turn to know it was Wesley. His steps echoed softly behind her, unhurried. "I thought you might want to see it without me hovering," he said. "You hovered." Emotionally. She turned. "You bought a 3-story building and handed me the top floor. That's not hovering, that's rewriting gravity." Wesley slid his hands into his pockets. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." "I wasn't sure, either." He nodded like he understood something she hadn't articulated. She walked slowly to the far window, resting her fingertips on the cool frame. "Do you ever get tired of the view?" "I used to," he said, joining her. "But I think I was always looking at the wrong things." She tilted her head. "What changed?" "You." She didn't look at him, not yet. "I don't want this place if it's meant to replace something." "It's not," he said. "It's meant to hold something." She finally faced him. "Like what?" "Whatever you build here. A foundation. A future. A version of us that doesn't need dinner galas or rooftop speeches to mean something." Her throat tightened. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not," he said. "But it could be worth it." She studied him. Not the tailored clothes or the sculpted features, but what sat behind his eyes. The man who had learned to listen. The man who had walked into the wrong room and, instead of leaving, stayed until it changed him. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "First, I keep full autonomy. No cosigns, no backseat strategy." "Done." "Second, if I ever feel like it's becoming a monument to your money, I walk. I'll hold the door open." "And third," she hesitated, "if we do this, if we really try, I need you to stop apologizing for the man you used to be. I don't need penance. I need presence." Wesley took a slow breath. "I can give you that." She went quiet for a moment, then stepped forward and placed the key back in his hand. He looked down at it. "Changed your mind?" "No," she said, curling his fingers around it. "I want this to be ours. So you hold the key until I'm ready to unlock it. Together." He nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. Then she reached for him. And when their lips met, it wasn't tentative or cautious. It was clear, confident, and full of every unspoken agreement they'd forged in the space between fear and desire. She kissed him like she was choosing him, not as a gesture, but as a direction. And he kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life for the question. Later, they sat on the floor, backs against the wall, takeout containers between them. He passed her the last dumpling, and she took it without hesitation. "You're going to get used to this," she said, chewing thoughtfully. "Late nights. Cold noodles. Me muttering to myself while building pitch decks. I already am, he said. You'll hate it sometimes. I'll probably love it more. She leaned her head on his shoulder, the quiet settling around them like a blanket. You know, she said, I think the wrong room was always the right one. For both of us. He smiled into her hair. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones you don't plan. 3 months later, the brownstone buzzed with energy. The Fearless Founders Fellowship had launched quietly but effectively. The mentorships were underway. The space transformed into a thriving hub for early-stage women-led ventures. There was a glass-walled conference room, shelves lined with business books and donated laptops, and a corkboard filled with handwritten goals pinned by every woman who walked through the door. Wesley never tried to take credit. He came by some days with coffee, other days with nothing but time. He met with the ments when asked, hosted the occasional workshop, and otherwise stayed out of the way. Emery ran it all like she was born for it. One morning, as she was pinning a new goal to the corkboard, she felt arms wrap around her waist from behind. You're early, she said. I missed you. I was gone for 3 hours. I missed you intensely. She turned in his arms. You're ridiculous. I'm ridiculous in love, he said, which I've been told is incurable. She kissed him. Don't seek treatment. He pulled back just enough to hand her a small envelope. What's this? She asked. An idea. Inside was a photograph of a plot of land. Coastal. Rugged. Untouched. There's a cabin on the bluff, he said. Needs work. But I thought maybe, when we're ready to go quiet again, we could have somewhere that belongs to no one but us. She traced the edges of the photo. You really don't stop, do you? Only when you tell me to. I'm not going to tell you to stop, she said softly. I'm going to tell you yes. He kissed the corner of her mouth. To the cabin? To everything. He smiled. Then there's one more thing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Before you panic, he said quickly. It's not a ring. Not yet. He opened it to reveal a simple gold bracelet engraved on the inside with a single phrase. Wrong room. Right life. She stared at it for a long moment before slipping it on. I think, she whispered, voice thickening, this is the most perfect thing I've ever seen. He touched her cheek, thumb grazing the edge of her jaw. I'm just getting started. A year later, the brownstone's courtyard bloomed with white roses and lanterns. Guests gathered beneath strings of lights as Emery walked barefoot down a path lined with women she had mentored, each holding a candle. Wesley waited under a simple archway, no tux, no flash, just an open collar and eyes full of awe. Their vows were whispered, not for show, but for truth. Afterward, as music filled the air and laughter spilled across the courtyard, Emery leaned against Wesley's chest and closed her eyes. You know what I used to believe, she said. What? That I had to do everything alone to prove I was strong. And now I know I'm strongest with you beside me. He kissed her temple. You were always strong. I just got lucky enough to witness it. She smiled, and as the night folded around them, she knew with a certainty that settled in her bones this was the life she'd built. Not handed. Not borrowed. Built? With him. And it was exactly where she was meant to be.